either happiness or distress, I think, is where we have our most creative times, because we've got to put that energy and that emotion somewhere.
And in these 2 last years, I basically became someone that was not recognizable to me or necessarily to my husband or to people who were around me. I sort of, changed a lot and became someone I was less and less comfortable with.
That's Emily Renier and Margaret Soraya, both guests on the podcast today. Just over a month back, toward the, it's the start of March, actually, I presented a live show in London for my other podcast that I record every couple of weeks with my reprobate buddy Mullins. A live stage version, if you like, of the Fujicast. And we had a couple of special additional speakers who were part of Fujifilm's camera ambassadorial lineup. There was Mr. Whisper, the amazing street photographer, and Emily Renier, who also shoots street, although billed that day as the social photographer in terms of weddings and portraits. This is like the old adage, isn't it, of buses. In 429 episodes, we've talked to, I don't know, maybe a half dozen or so photographers who frequent the wedding world, and in 2 weeks, we featured a brace of them. Although today, it's not really a conversation about weddings, or buses for that matter, although inevitably we'll touch on that. Today, Emily Renier, Fujifilm UK's latest ambassador, talks about finding your way out of a pretty dark place, a journey of self-discovery that involved making pictures in her back garden. A story that we're familiar with in some respects from former guests. The wider Finding Photography story was one she told at this live show that I hosted in London's very trendy Covent Garden at the House of Photography venue and store. The talk that Emily gave, which she'll reference within our conversation today, wasn't entirely about photography, although of course there was an important thread of picture making running throughout. No, the talk was about authenticity, both personal and professional, and keeping your head, your nerve, your creativity too, in an Instagram world that shouts very loudly indeed. And then my second guest, as we walk together on the Photo Walk show, is Margaret Soraya, who's appeared on the show before when we talked about her incredible land and seascape photographs that are truly, well, I think they're meditational in many ways. Margaret helps others to find their creative outlet, or rather embrace their creativity and play. Because play is something that's vital for our creativity. I heard that, it's a news story I heard the other day, that play is something that doctors are thinking of prescribing. It's that important to our lives. This way, pups. Come on. Don't be going that way. And she's been on her own journey of creative discovery of late, following the passing of her mum, where creativity has been such an important part of her mental health and healing.
Today on the Photo Walk.
It was my creativity that's got me through these past few months, basically, so it's been really important to me.
You basically tell yourself all the things you can't be, and then through photography and through this journey, I've realised all the things that I can be.
We see a lot of nonsense, don't we? We see a lot of bravado out there where it's like, I'm living this amazing life and I've got 7-figure income.
What I do know is that the less time I spend on Instagram, the happier I am.
I've started to understand more how creativity can help us with our well-being.
All humans tend to have the exact same principles of a need for love and shelter and security and challenge.
I think that photography is more powerful if it's got not necessarily words with it, but words behind it.
Emily Renier, our Belgique friend of the show, and Margaret Soraya, who lives on beautiful Harris Island, the southern island of Scotland's Outer Hebrides, both talking today about the healing and reparative power of creativity. And before I give you a flavour of what's in today's mailbag, also on the show, Thank you to our extra milers and MPB who sponsor this show and keep us here week on week. I'm about to visit MPB in the coming months to make some short films that we'll be using on the YouTube channel about quality used camera gear. They are a website, mpb.com that is now, where you can safely buy and sell and trade quality used photo and video gear online, and you become a part of the circular economy. Sustainability is, well, ever more important, isn't it? And here's how the whole thing works. You go online to mpb.com, you click the button at the top of the website that says Start Selling and Trading in that voice, and just follow the very easy instructions where you're prompted to enter the model name and click a box for the appropriate condition. From there, your kit is collected from your front door, and then MPB, they pay you for your camera gear within days. And here's a bonus. If your gear is in better condition than expected, they will automatically increase the amount that you get paid. MPB's price commitment provides the right price up front, and they provide instant quotes guaranteed for 14 days, and they never add hidden fees. So make more money by avoiding seller fees when you sell to MPB with a price commitment that gives visual storytellers like what you is and like what I am the right price up front for our kit. Don't laugh at yourself, Neil. I'll have a link on the show page today, or simply remember these 3 letters, mpb.com. On the show today then, why the recent eclipse seems to have brought people together in a world where the busyness and day-to-day stuff does its best to, well, pull us apart. Why AI possibly isn't the monster to hide behind the sofa from. Recharging batteries in a beautiful forest, and fortuitously forgetting to pack the laptop. Plus, we'll remind you of this month's wonderful and very fitting today assignment. Shall we walk then? Checklist out. Coffee, check. Garibaldi's. Yep, this week, check. Walking shoes, check. Memory cards or film loaded and everything primed to make pictures with, check. All right, let's walk then. Welcome along to the Photo Walk podcast, a show for those who find escapism and peace away from the noise of this world, putting miles under our feet and making a picture or 3 to remind us of where those footprints were left. Letters, guests, and even a song at the end of the show. But do not fear. It's not me holding a guitar strumming. There's enough problems in this world without me doing that to your ears. Let's get a picture of where we're walking. Now, I've walked a lot of late at Greenham Common. I do enjoy coming here because there's 1,000 or so acres. I think that's the figure. If not, I've just made it up. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Quiet, apart from the aircraft, which you will hear. This is a kind of a waypoint for small private aircraft, I feel. Or they just all seem to know that I'm out doing a photo walk. Quick, jump in your aircraft, chaps. Sorted, 12 o'clock. Neil's doing his photo walk. Let me get a picture of where we are. Mally would like this for the trees, because there's lots of... I know he doesn't always get too excited about new growth, but there's a lot of silver birch here, fairly new silver birch, growing at this former airfield of Greenham Common. Let me put your letters down and take a picture through the trees. Oh, there we go. I'm using my X100V 1500 shutter speed f4. Oh, actually, let me just dial in a bit more exposure. There we go. 160 ISO f4. Here we go. My sketchbook images as we make our walk. This way, pups. Sir Barkalot's with me as well. He was a bit grumpy with me earlier. I've been to the dentist this morning, and see, there comes the first plane. And his normal sort of first thing in the morning walk had to wait while I went off to see Emily, a different Emily. There's 2 Emilys today, Emily Renier and Emily the dentist. So he was a bit grumpy first. You're going out, you're not taking me. You don't want to come here, I promise you that. Let me do this bit on my own, my boy. First letter, in the mailbag. Now, I know, I mentioned this last week on the show, but another letter came flooding in. And before this becomes very old news, I wanted to just read another letter on it, if you'd bear with me. And it has the benefit of having a thumpingly good picture or three, all of which will be on the show page today. It's from our friend Alan Sorensen. Alan, Neil? Yes, Alan, you know him. What, the Alan with the amazing pictures of the hummingbirds captured in flight on his Instagrid? Yep, the very same one. Neil, it's been a week since the total solar eclipse. It's a bit more now, actually, in the States, and I'm thinking about that day and musing about our place in the universe. Careful. Since you and Neil Ford, who's in charge of IT, have graciously used my eclipse photo as the cover of the Photo Walk Facebook page, I thought I'd share some of my thoughts this past week. Yes, it was a really good picture. We loved it. That's why it's the feature picture. That was Neil Ford's idea, by the way, to have feature pictures, which has turned into a really good idea. Neil seems to have all the good ideas. This was my second total eclipse, having experienced it with my entire family in 2017. At that time, I was attempting to photograph what I thought would be just another astrological event. I was prepared with 2 cameras and even had assistance from my daughter, but nothing prepared us for what we were to experience. I got some wonderful shots leading up to totality, but at the critical moment, back in 2017 this is, we were so mesmerised by what we saw, I forgot to take off my solar filter and ended up with about 100 photos of nothing but a black frame. It took me a few minutes to stop kicking myself and realise that the photos weren't as important as the opportunity to share this incredible event with my family, and it's something we still talk about and bond over today. This time, though, I was more prepared, mentally and photographically. I used a wonderful app called Solar Eclipse Timer. Note to self, leave a link to that on the show page, which literally tells you when to remove the filter. The photos included are some that I captured last week. I was again overcome by emotion, but was prepared and able to both watch and photograph totality. Now, as in 2017, I believe you can't really describe what totality is actually like. But there's a quote by the author, Annie Dillard, that comes pretty close. She said, "I'd seen a partial eclipse in 1970. A partial eclipse is very interesting. It bears almost no relation to a total eclipse. Seeing a partial eclipse bears the same relation to seeing a total eclipse as kissing a man does to marrying him, or as flying in an aeroplane does to falling out of an aeroplane. Although one experience precedes the other, it in no way prepares you for it. That said, no photo can adequately capture what is a multi-sensory event. You must see it for yourself to believe it." Hear, hear. Annie Dillard. Well, says Alan, last Monday, despite the traffic being as bad as predicted and overcast skies in parts of the country, it was an event that brought our divided country together to share in something larger than ourselves. The New York Times reported a 40% drop in internet traffic along the path of totality as people looked up and cheered together. It was a sign of hope that we can indeed put our differences aside and come together as people on this pale blue dot. Carl Sagan said that. He may have said it, Alan, but sadly he isn't alive to write into the show to share it, so you did it, well, for him. I strongly encourage you, says Alan, and the other listener, to plan a trip to view totality. There is one in Spain and another in Portugal in 2026. Maybe a workshop or trip with our community, he says, with a sort of wink, I'm sure. But I have to say, yeah, it's a lovely idea. But what if it was a really cloudy sky and we totally missed it? And that was the entire reason for our trip there. It would be, one of my favourite expressions now, a proper damp squib of an adventure. Or as my son says, a damp squid of an adventure. I did look up Carl Sagan, though, and it turns out that atop being famous as an American astronomer, planetary scientist, and science communicator, Oh, walk on, pups. Bit of a waterfall there. He was a pioneer in the field of exobiology. Fingers on buzzers. What's exobiology? 5, 4, 3. Hand up at the back. Oh, very good. Do you know? You do? No, it's not that. It's the study of the possibility of extraterrestrial life out there somewhere. He was the very first of his profession to determine that life could have existed on Mars, although it might have been billions of years ago when there was actually a lake on the planet. A lake on the planet? This is new news to me. See? Yeah. You learn something every minute on this show. That could just prove useful in a pub quiz someday. So thank you, Alan. And the pictures, your extraordinary pictures, all 3 of them, the triptych will be on the show page today. Oh, this is a steep hillette, isn't it, pups? You'll need to pull me up with your lead. It's a nice view of the woodland, looking down into it. Let me get another picture. Although, actually, I'm going to put your letters down. I'm going to look up. Do that thing we often talk about. Look up. See what's above you, because the canopy, often in woodland, is really lovely. I've probably got a library of canopy shots now. F5, 1900 shutter speed. I'm at 160 ISO. There we go. Sketchbook images. That's what I call them if you're new to this show. Just something and nothing pictures that just show where you've been. All right, do we take the left or right fork, pups? What's your thoughts? You don't care? I can tell that. A quick one from Dominic Sagar before I introduce my first guest to you today, Emily Renier. Hi, Neil. Greetings from Colorado land. I thought I'd forward this email to you as you've been doing some features on AI recently. We have. I've been following Seth Godin on and off for years, and he has some great perspectives on stuff. And I do like his take on AI. Its usage is going to be a driving factor. There will be demand for more, better photographs rather than a replacement of photographers. This is the piece that Seth wrote that Dominic forwarded on to me, which I think you might be quite interested in. It's about Jevons paradox. I'm looking at my other listener, who's like a wobbling jelly hiding behind the sofa of flattery that I drag behind me each week. What's Jevons paradox, Neil? Yes, and I mentioned A and I, which usually frightens my other listener a little bit as well. Jevons paradox is very grown up, isn't it? Sounds like the sort of thing that would be taught at school. That you'd have little to no recall of when it came up as an exam question. Jevons? What's Jevons? Well, other listener, I shall explain what it is. You'll never need to use it, not even for a pub quiz. And if it does come up as a pub quiz question, may I suggest you're in the wrong kind of pub. Jevons paradox, according to the Oracle, or Wikipedia, as I know it, is the following. In economics, the Jevons paradox occurs when technological progress increases the efficiency with which a resource is used, but the falling cost of use induces an increase in demand. Does that help? Oh no, you've got a nosebleed now. Anyway, listen, Seth Godin, very, very clever chap. He knows about this sort of stuff because he's an author and an entrepreneur. Spell that, please. He just knows stuff. When a resource can be used more efficiently, he said, we end up using more of the thing, not less. So, when cars get better gas mileage, people drive more and consumption can actually go up. When AI learns to write computer code, the demand for programmers goes up because more efficient code is more attractive and we want more of it. We rarely consider the fact that human beings have invented 6 billion jobs in my lifetime, says Mr. Godin. My hunch is that AI is going to produce far more opportunities than it actually destroys. Other listener, you could come up from behind the sofa now. Seth says everything's going to be okay. Dominic, thank you for the letter. And I'm leaving a link to your website on the show page, which has, I think, a wonderfully written travel log where you, with your camera, toured on 2 wheels across Europe last year. Right. I have 2 guests today. Pups, don't do that. Oh, no. It's going to start rolling or something. No, thank you. It takes too long in the shower. 2 guests today, both of whom have found photography and creativity rescued them at times of their lives they needed it most. And if that sounds like a grand statement, I'm pleased, because it's supposed to be. Both Emily and Margaret returned for second parts of their chats on the Extra Mile this week as well. The stories told are not like, they're not like life story conversations today on this show in terms of let's find out about your photographic career in detail. Now, this is the story of the wonderful life gift that is creativity, and how it comes riding over the figurative hill to rescue us at the times we sometimes least expect it, and at other times when we most need it. I'm going to begin with Emily Renier today, who came to a proper crossroads in life. But also quite literally in her car one day, not knowing whether to turn left or right or just drive on or drive at all. So she sat there for a couple of hours that were to lead to an entirely different kind of creative life. I'm bowled over, as us Brits say, to have Emily as a friend, actually, and in less than a decade, she's built a business in social photography and gone on to become an ambassador for a camera company very close to my own heart. That being Fujifilm. Here is Emily Renier. It's been an amazing year for you. I'm going to sound like your parent when I say I'm so proud of you, because you've become this Fujifilm ambassador. I know they call it ex-photographer. I still have trouble with that because it makes you sound like you were a former photographer. But you are an ambassador. It's been for about, officially now for about a month and a bit, isn't it, by the time this goes out on air?
Yeah, since January, so quite...
No, a bit longer. Oh, blimey, how the months actually go quickly. So what is it meant to you so far? And then I'll sort of rewind and ask about the journey itself to becoming a photographic ambassador for a camera company.
What's it meant to me, I guess, is kind of like, you know my story, you know that, I did a different job, had a monumental breakdown and started from scratch doing something completely different. And at the time when I made the decision to jump ship overnight and try something different, I had no idea what it was going to lead. Now, becoming an ambassador means that I managed to pick myself back up. That's what it means to me. And I didn't have it in my mind all this time, I'll be an ambassador, that's my aim. My aim was to try and do the best that I could, and be the best photographer that I could according to my own rules. And that's what it means to me. It means that I was able to go through something really tough, reach rock bottom, and kind of go, I can do this again. And so therefore it means that if something awful happens again, then I'm thinking, well, okay, life is like that. It throws stuff at you. You don't know what that could be the next day, but I've got it in me. I can do this again if I need to.
Do you mind me rewinding quite a way? Because you were in a very different career, creative career in some respects, but you're in a very different career when that happened. Perhaps lead us through that and then how it manifested to become photography.
So I was a teacher for 12 years, and in the last 2 years I became a deputy, acting deputy head, and then became a deputy. And in these 2 last years, I basically became someone that was not recognizable to me or necessarily to my husband or to people who were around me. I sort of, changed a lot and became someone I was less and less comfortable with. And like I said in my talk, it was a case of focusing on all the wrong things in life. Numbers, trying to, I had a fast car to drive, how much I can earn. And I actually went into teaching because I wanted to make a difference and contribute to community and celebrate early life and what children can offer to the world and so on. But unfortunately in that school, which, had a difficult working environment, and many people who've been in the industry know that schools can be very tough to work in. And when you become a deputy head and you answer to Ofsted, the ball game changes completely. And I got carried away with a set of goals that were not me. I woke up one day, drove to school and broke down at the wheel and stayed parked for a few hours, and eventually my husband came to find me, and that was that. And for a good few weeks, 2 months, I'd spent my time in bed, struggling to get out of bed and struggling to literally put one step in front of the other. But what I did know is that photography was something that I liked. So it wasn't a case of picking up my camera and going, right, okay, I'll do this for a job now. It was a case of, I feel a bit better, I'll get out of bed today. I'll use my camera and take a photo of that daisy in the garden. And then it built from there. That was 2017. And then my first wedding was in 2019. So, it kind of progressed from there. It was a slow journey to begin with, but only because, well, if anyone's had a breakdown, it is a slow recovery. It doesn't happen overnight.
So it was literally picking a camera up to take pictures of what was in the garden that lit your creative fire, as it were.
I've always had people as subjects that I enjoy. So even before, whilst I was teaching, I'd travel with my husband, and taking pictures of people whilst we travel was always something that I was interested in. So yes, I picked up, when I was unwell, going in my garden, taking a picture of a daisy was the first step out of bed in the right direction. But as soon as I was able to kind of get a rhythm going again, then I hit the streets of London very quickly. So, yeah. Well,
photography becomes your new muse. More than a muse, it becomes your career. Were you expecting it to become that? Or did you think, well, I know when I started, Emily, I thought, well, I feel like a bit of a visitor here for a while. I'll probably just pop back and do what I know I could do well in maybe a year or two. But it didn't. That didn't pan out that way, did it?
No, definitely not. I did not see myself. I mean, when you're really poorly like that, you just basically think, can I just go to a job and sit down at a desk for a few hours and come home safely? You have no... you try and one step at a time. So to see myself doing it for a job, I really didn't see that. And in fact, when I did get my first camera for Fujifilm, and then I found Kev, the day before, and then I sent him a text and said, yeah, I realized that you're doing mentoring. Can you become my mentor? And I signed up to his year mentorship. I remember in my email to him saying, I'm not actually looking for becoming... I don't want to, build a business from this. I literally just want to know how to do this job better. I actually told him that. And he was like, yeah, no problem. We'll just go see where this heads. So I definitely didn't think that it was going to get to this point.
Has it been an adventure?
Yeah, of course. Massive adventure. Because you basically learn about yourself and about people around you and what you're capable of, and you basically tell yourself all the things you can't be. And then through photography and through this journey, I've realized all the things that I can be. And it's scary, and it's been a lot of failing, but a lot of successes too, but only because I've really come out of my comfort zone. And you ask how the Fujifilm gig was going. That's exactly how it is. Like, I do sort of maybe interviews with Fujifilm for different kind of articles, or I'll go and do an event with them, or a corporate, do all the stuff that I thought I would never be able to do in the past. It's just, that's not Emily. Emily doesn't do that, and then suddenly I go, actually, maybe I could do that. And then you do it and you go, oh my word, this was so much fun. I really enjoyed this. Yeah. And then you learn loads more about yourself and what you're capable of doing. And yeah, there's some of it that you're less keen on, but it's just this constant going out of your comfort zone. And then you're thinking, wow, I've learned a lot about what life is like or what it's not like. And I didn't expect it to be this way at all.
But does the magic ever change in creative terms when you go from being an amateur or hobbyist to a professional? I know the words change, but does the feeling change? And what I mean by that, I remember working in television just for a tiny bit. I've always been more radio man than telly, but I remember one day walking onto a set, and I went to the edge of the set. This is quite a pivotal moment. I went to the edge of the set, and I gave it a little wiggle, and I thought, my God, this is like it's made of paper mache. But on the television, it looks so real. And the magic was kind of lost for television in that one moment. I never went on to work in television. I went on eventually to be a photographer. And I still love radio because everything about it seems so real. But everything about television seems so unreal. And I wonder whether when you transition from something you're interested in to something that becomes your job, whether... And this is something we have letters on from time to time, whether some of the magic is rubbed off.
It's a good question. When you're dealing with clients and people, it's an entirely different gig, because now the money is part of the equation. So that for sure is going to change your relationship with the job that you're doing, and your creative flow, and what you should get out of it and what your client should get out of it. But I suppose, what I mentioned in my talk as well is what I do has got to have a meaning. And I guess the day when I can't find that meaning anymore is when the magic's gone completely. And that's probably the day when I need to, to not do this job anymore. I still get... So I've done, a tenth of your number of weddings. I've done 100 or so now. But after 100, I don't know about you, you've done that many more. I still get really choked up when I see the bride walking down the aisle with her dad, or during speeches. There is not many weddings where I don't feel intense emotion. And I guess that means that the magic is still there. And yeah, of course, you come home, you've got to do hours, in the studio, in your office, going through the pictures, and that takes the magic away. But then you deliver your images, and it's just nice to see the impact that your images have on your clients, and the whole workflow provides those bits of magic here and there to keep the whole journey significant enough for you to keep going at it, I guess.
It was interesting talking to John Dolan, the American photographer. Now, his advertising work was much celebrated. His wedding work is even more so. And he was saying that it's very important to shoot for yourself. And that's, I think, where a lot of people find, and myself included, I will include myself very much in this club of knowing when to say, no, I want to do it that way, or try to be a crowd pleaser. Does that make sense?
100%, yeah.
Finding that where do you have to be a crowd pleaser, or do you, like John, do you say no, it's my way or the highway? He says it in a very nice way, I know. It's that ability that he has, that he's earned, to actually say, no, I'm shooting for myself.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. I have to say that I'm still, if you think about it, it's my 6th year, of doing this, and then 5th year of weddings. I haven't got enough, confidence in me to tell someone it's this way or no way. And maybe it will come with time, and, maybe, with more years clocked. But I'm not there yet. And I think that's a really valid question. It's something that I ask myself all the time as I'm shooting. Is who am I? What am I doing? Is this what I really want to shoot, or who am I doing this for? And in doubt, when my mind gets too busy and too crowded, I just go back to who's paying for this service? Who's my client, first of all? And is this meaningful? Is this picture meaningful? That's my criteria, if it gets too confusing.
And is it possible to do that several hundred times during a wedding? Because not every picture can be meaningful. Sometimes they're going to be record pictures, and that will be the same whether you're a photojournalist on assignments. Not every picture can be a magazine spread. This is worthy of a million eyes being set up.
Absolutely. And the worst thing about Instagram is that it makes you think, because you're seeing all the best work all the time, it makes you think that the only pictures ever taken are meaningful and perfect and wonderful.
It's an interesting thing, social media. Social media almost plays you back into, we're almost back into the land from which you came, where you were dealing with, I suppose, not the mental battles, but the mental scars sometimes of having to perform. You're part of that world of everybody sharing the best of what they are, which I find bloody draining.
Yeah, it's exhausting. Absolutely exhausting. I 100%, agree with you. And my journey on Instagram, people say, oh, your grid looks great. But for me, it's a huge amount of time and work on it. I get also confused about what I should put out there and how I should put myself out there as a person. What I do know is the less time I spend on Instagram, the happier I am.
Yeah.
But I've got a bit of an addiction. But yeah, I agree with you. We all portray the best of ourselves on there, and that's an incredibly toxic environment to be in.
To that extent, though, you've got another Instagram account, which is your street work, which you probably view in an entirely different sense, don't you?
Yeah, I do. The nice thing about my street stuff is it is very much how I want to shoot and what I want to shoot, and it's on there. And I tend to be more free as well with how I express myself, because it's not really a professional. I don't see it, as much as a professional kind of platform. But it's still, it's still visual and it's still visible. So you've still got to it's still maintaining And then as you are an ambassador, there's also, professional responsibilities that come with that role, which I think is absolutely right too. When you represent a brand, there's something bigger out there that you've got to represent. So it's not as simple as that.
Has street photography become your daisies in the garden?
I love that. Yeah, probably. Yeah, it has actually, Neil. That's a really nice way of putting it. I feel much quieter in my head when I'm shooting alone in the street. That's for sure. There's no one's paying me for this. No one's telling me when to press the button. And sometimes I'll take pictures that are dead boring to everyone else, but for me, it's a perfect picture. It's really satisfying. Now, I've got to man up really in that respect and put those on Instagram more often. Put the ones that I know that are boring to everyone else, but just float my boat. And I'm probably not as good as doing that. I'm still going, is that good enough for Instagram? Is that good enough for everyone else? I'm still thinking way too much about that.
So you've been going on some you're on a world tour. It's not that you've been on the world tours. You're doing your round the world in bits, bite-sized friendly bits. But you've been to some great places so far, haven't you?
Yeah, so basically a while back, as you know, when you've been married for a while, and I'm not afraid to say this, you kind of get into a rut as a couple and you kind of go, we're doing the same thing over and over again. How about a project? And my husband is great, with ideas. And he said, how about to get us out of this rut that we're in as a couple, why don't we just do something together? And around that point, we had started watching Around the World in 80 Days with Michael Palin.
Oh, I love that show. Yes.
I know. I adore that program.
He was, of all the people who have done round the world stuff and great train adventures, Michael Palin is the one for me.
He really is. Well, because he just shines through his complete lack of ego, and it's all about what's out there rather than him, and that's why it's just such joyful viewing. But so we watched it from start to finish, and we said, okay, we'll do the same thing, and we'll follow his lead. And obviously, he's following Phileas Fogg, so it's it is 80 days, around the world in 80 days. But the world now is actually very, very different to how it was in the 1980s. Actually, a lot less safe.
Yeah.
So there's so many more areas of the world that we can't actually go in anymore. And as it happens, Michael Palin did an article in the Big Issue a couple of years ago when he said that if he were to do that trip again now, he wouldn't be able to do it.
Really?
And so as we are going through the world, we are finding that there are more and more places that we can't go in. So we're having to kind of not go this same route. But, it's still really interesting. And the reason why it's interesting to do it this way is because you see landscape change, but you see cultures change really gradually. And it's a beautiful feeling to see humans change, but they're not changed because they're changing so gradually, you're realizing we're completely all the same.
Yeah.
And so you end up having very similar conversations with someone in France and Italy and Venice as you are with someone in Serbia and Bulgaria and Cyprus. All humans tend to have the exact same principles of a need for love and shelter and security and challenge and creativity and all that. And as you know, being a wedding photographer, and you've done 1,000 of them, with people from all sorts of different backgrounds, you recognize what are in the speeches. They're all about the same thing. They're all about, we love each other, we love being in this room together, we need to be validated, we need to be celebrated, and that kind of is a really unifying force. So it's really, really amazing going through the world and seeing things change gradually. Is really precious in that respect.
I know you're doing this in segments, as it were, and having to return to parts of the world to do this trip. Would you like to have done it in the 80 days? I know it's not been practical, but would you like to have done it all in a row, as it were?
I would have loved that. Would I have loved that? I don't know. I like to think that I'd have loved that, Neil. I'd like to think that I'm that adventurous, but sometimes I do remember that I am set in my own ways, and I do like to be in bed by 9 or on my sofa watching something.
That's not very Phileas Fogg, for heaven's sake.
I know. So I think that, I'm quite happy being 44 now and just saying that I love adventure, but in a comfortable way.
Yeah.
So I don't have an issue with saying that. But yes, it does feel disjointed, and also it doesn't feel entirely ecologically great because, we're having to take more flights coming back every time. But it is still something we wanted to do because, like I said, going across the world gradually is something that you can't experience by going to different places here and there. To see that gradual change is everything.
And how are you travelling? Are you travelling by train or car? Or
we'll take the first, essentially we start with one flight and then it's trains or public transport across to the next segment. So we started this time around in Zagreb in Croatia with a flight, and then we took buses and trains because the train infrastructure in that area of the world is not 100% there at the moment. Yeah. So, and then we ended up in Thessalonica in Greece, and then took a flight to Cyprus because that is the most eastern point that we could go to without arriving in Egypt. We were going to go through Turkey, and we were going to go through Turkey and then arrive in the northern part of Cyprus, and then travel down to the southern part of Cyprus and go through Greece. And then we realized that you can't do that for geopolitical reasons. The occupied part of Cyprus is not internationally recognized, so we would have actually got stuck and arrested in the southern part if we'd done that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's mostly public transport with a bookends of flights that wish we didn't have to take, but life is the way it is, and I have to earn a living, so that's the way we need to do it.
And how are you photographically recording this? I'm assuming there will be a book.
Good question. You know what? I know this might be a great surprise to many people, but when I go and travel and I'm spending that time with my husband, I try not hunt so much. And I use the word hunt because as soon as I've got my camera with me, my eyes change. And I don't know if you know what you mean, but as soon as I've got my camera with me, I look at things differently, and I'm always hunting for a moment. And I'm always hunting for that frame. So I do try and actually be in the moment far more and spend that time with my husband, so that those memories are about being with the moment with my husband rather than I went out and, photographed the world sort of thing. Yeah. I am taking pictures for sure, and there will be a little album that I put together for myself. But the point of being out there is not to document, it is to have those memories and create those memories with my husband.
I have to ask, coming back to Fujifilm, I have to ask, because if I don't, I'm sure somebody will be screaming right now saying, ask her, go on, ask her. How do you become an ambassador?
How did I?
No, how do you? I mean, what we're all looking for here now is the silver bullet. This is the way it works. Follow chapter by chapter. Do this, and you will become.
Okay, so the way that I can answer this is if you are asking yourself this question, then you won't become an ambassador.
Ah, very good.
It's absolutely not. It's not. There is no method. There is just be yourself, and if you believe in the product and you share that with people out there because you believe in it, then do. And if it comes out right and the way you are and your vision of the world and what you want to make of your experiences coincides with what Fuji wants, then that's a good marriage. But if I would say, because to be fair, I do get asked that question quite often now. Hey, by the way, how did you become an ambassador? What did you have to do? And the answer is, if you're asking yourself that question and you think there is an answer, then you're not going to be an ambassador.
It's not something for the trophy cabinet, is it?
No, what do you mean by trophy cabinet?
Well, I get the feeling that some people hunt the ambassador or ambassadorial thing because, of course, it's good for business or it's good for profile or it's good for Instagram, when that's not the reason why, when I talk to ambassadors who've been there for a while, actually, that's not the reason that they became one. I guess you've got to be honest with yourself as well. Of course, I mean, if someone said, what are some of the best achievements of your life that you're proud of? I'd say, well, becoming an ambassador is one of them, not for its own sake, but like I said earlier, because it meant that I was able to start again and because I picked myself up and was the best version that I could of myself in that phase of my life. So, yeah, it is an achievement. It basically says, Emily, whatever you're doing, you're kind of in the right direction. There's a big camera company out there that thinks that your work is all right. So that must mean it's a good stamp of approval, right? So, yeah, I would say it's a metaphorical trophy, but it's not necessarily that, 5 years ago, I thought, right, I want that trophy in my cabinet. How do I go about getting it? It's more a kind of organic outcome of an evolution of how, my journey.
and it's great, and I'm really proud of it. But I don't think it's something you hunt, because then that means you've not got it. If you were hunting, then that you've not got the point of it.
And talking of evolution, what happens to your career now and your photography? What's the next plans?
Well, yeah, I get asked that question a lot. Well, to be fair, I just want to have a nice life where I feel content, and I take pictures that I'm proud of and develop relationship with people around me that I'm also proud of, and that could be anyone. My only goal is to feel okay as a human being and make good relationships with other human beings along the way. I don't really have a next thing. I know that might sound a bit boring and unambitious, but I'm just basically doing the best I can on a daily basis and don't know where that could lead next. If it doesn't lead to anything more, then I don't mind, as long as I'm happy and the people around me are all right.
So in many ways, you may well have, by that response, answered the question that I'd like to close with, which is... and you've heard me ask this before. What's your why, Emily?
My why is to stay in the moment as much as I can. And what I mean by that is I am, like I've mentioned before, I've got really bad anxiety, got a terrible habit of spiraling. And if I can find a way to keep me in the present with my feet on the ground, then that's my why. And when I take pictures, and I try and take pictures that are meaningful, you're right, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's just documenting something for the sake of documenting it. Well, that keeps me in the moment. But mainly, taking meaningful pictures for someone that I know will appreciate them, that keeps me in the moment, that keeps me grounded, that keeps me mentally as well as I can be in a specific moment. So that's my why.
And Emily Renier returns in the extra mile today, where it gets, well, at times quite personal when we talk about how precious social photography can be at the most extreme moments of one's life. If you'd like to, what have you got, pups? Look at him. He's got his is that stick of the day? Stick of the day. I almost had, when I was awash with money, which never was the case, a jingle. There was a jingle company. I just happened to be talking to them one day. I can't remember why. There must have been a reason. And I said, could you make a jingle for my dog? And they said, what, would you want his name in it? I said, no, I just want stick of the day. And I'll put it on Instagram, stick of the day, and have a picture of him proudly holding his stick. Never takes him home. At some stage, he drops it on the floor and looks at me in that kind of hopeful manner of, well, come on, you take it for me. No, you've got enough to carry, thank you. Without collecting a bundle of sticks along my path. If you'd like to write into the show, I would love to hear from you. Your letters make this show. It's a very different kind of podcast. As well, if you're new around these parts, as I say, sounding like a Western, we are a very different kind of photography podcast, a mailbag-driven show. With our guests, our important guests, of course. Look at the size of that bee. Sorry. Look at that. Are you sure we've not come into Jurassic Park? Can't be. That's as big as a bird, honestly. This way, pups. I'm not sure if that's got a nest near it. I'm not sure. Let's take the left fork here. Good idea. Let's go this way. If you'd like to send in a letter with some pictures, then I'd love to hear from you. Send your email to stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. If you're sending pictures, if you can optimize them to 2,500 pixels wide, then you are a star. If you can't, you're still a star, because it's great to receive stuff from you. And I'll do as I say, the heavy lifting. I've got friends now that say that to me. Who was I talking to the other day? Jason Florio, the photojournalist that I'm doing the Indian adventure with. He said, we were in a conversation, and he said, don't worry, I'll do the heavy lifting for you. I thought, where have you got that from? Anyway, where were we? Let's go this way, pups. I think we've missed the... fantastic. I think... Oh, what's that? Brambles. No, careful. Oh, God, dear. You've got no fear, have you? Really? Squelch through this bit. Looking ahead in the year now, we have a second week of the Scottish retreat where we travel again to Inverness to stay on a working soft fruit farm with access to its own shop, selling homegrown and local produce within reach of the most beautiful historic landscapes, towns and cities. Now, I know you may well have heard me talking about this before, but we only really now have a couple of places left. One place opened up, funnily enough, on the first week, which we didn't have. It was completely closed. So there's a place there, and I believe there's a place in the second week. And then, well, that is it. It's the 5th Photo Walk retreat, if you add them all up, and it celebrates the feeling our podcast brings to this community. It's an opportunity to escape the noise and spend time with like-minded photographers. We'll be embracing some new creative challenges this time, and actually, in that I'm talking to Margaret Soraya about this, one of those new things that we'll be doing on a day during the Scottish retreat is creative writing. We do some creative writing in the morning, being taught by a professional, and then we're out in the afternoon, or mentored by a professional, and then in the afternoon we go out and we make stories with our cameras and also with our notepads. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about creative writing. I think it's such an important part of creativity, which will become reasonably obvious in my next conversation. So we're doing that. We're going into the dark room. That's one of my favourite bits of the week. It's right at the start of the week. It's a sort of a mixture of awe as you see pictures come alive in front of you, and also hilarity when it doesn't all go as planned. So we're doing that, learning how to make sound a part of your stills photography, and enjoying a breakaway as we encourage, talk with, eat with, laugh with, and of course walk with each other. Right, the assignment this month, I think this assignment is perfect given the feel of today's show in terms of finding a calming nature through creativity. It's set this month by former guest Stephen Wilkes.
The Photo Walk assignment.
I think, Stephen, you're perfectly placed to set an assignment. We're doing single word assignments this year. If you had to think of a word to assign, to challenge a photographer with, challenge their eyes with, what would that word be?
I'm thinking of the word in a world where we have so much tension going on right now. I feel like it'd be interesting to see if people could relate to being Zen. You know, what is Zen? A visual sense of Zen in a photograph. Yeah. It could be a lone tree in a lake that's calm. It could be, a person, sitting on a bench. It's anything that reflects calm to you, like a quiet moment that allows you to almost experience a certain kind of calmness, a certain kind of meditation in a way. It could be, I find myself when I look at rocks on the beach, it's very Zen, meditative almost. So it could be something that's very still. It could be something that maybe has emotion too. There's nothing that doesn't, or movement. It's just it's a feeling. I think that could be an interesting one for sure.
Listen to this. That is as quiet as Greenham Common ever gets. Beautiful. Pups, listen. He's actually laid down. I'm bored. Let's go for the walk. We'll go for the walk. Let me get a picture. Let me get a photograph. It's just really, it looks like a sort of meadow opening in front of me. 1100 shutter speed, f5, 160 ISO. And just behind me, another one of these, and I often talk about this when I've walked up here at Greenham Common. The Americans who controlled the airbase, took one too quickly, who controlled the airbase for many years, when they had it, they put lots of fire hydrants in, some of which have been left here. They're proper American fire hydrants. Let's get down a bit lower. 1500 shutter speed. Big shadow coming off the side of that. That is one of the American ones, isn't it, pups? Shall we have a quick look? What does it say? Somewhere on here it says USA. Somewhere. Yeah, there we go. US. So it's, it's an extraordinary part of America in England land. I've mentioned a few times bringing back the postcard feature. I think it will sit in the let's do it when they come in pile, which is an authentic, it's a real pile that I have back in the studio. It's a paper pile. I call it my ideas pile. It just gets larger and larger as I search for more and more in the week to do everything. Much like yourself, I'm sure. Anyway, here's a postcard and some pictures, actually, from our friend Phil Ferris. And I'll pop the pictures he's talking about on the show page today. Hi, Neil. I debated about sending a physical postcard to you, but that will be using somebody else's photos. So it's digital this time, through the power of the Mail of E. We've come to the Forest of Dean to recharge our batteries, as work is fairly intense these days in the good old NHS. I keep meaning to listen to the podcast while I have a pen to hand to make some notes, and until I do, I'll hold off commenting in the comments section. Oh, the delights of approaching old age. Not so much approaching, his words, not mine now, as having pulled up outside my door and on its way up the path. We first came to the forest in the mid-1980s and rapidly fell in love with the place, as well as staying in amazing properties way back when they were actually affordable. I even proposed to my wife, Kathy, at a spot here. We had a period of staying elsewhere, but in recent years find ourselves coming back to recharge. We've been talking about packing lighter this year. I managed this by leaving a bunch of our stuff behind when we set off by accident. Nothing crucial. I've got my cameras, but I did manage to leave both laptops, so no practical photo editing until we get back. The main thing I've been hoping for, though, has happened. Thank goodness I am taking photos. For quite some time I've been neglecting to take anything new that I'm happy with, plus leaving my website to, well, frankly, languish. There seemed to be little time outside of work. You don't need to bring out the world's smallest violin for me, as we've been taking some time out to de-stress properly instead. And one of the ways we've been de-stressing this week is to enjoy some meals, which explains the first, or quite a few of the pictures, actually. Phil, most of the pictures that you've sent me, they seem to be about food. And I have to say, looking at the picture of your nearest and dearest Kathy at the table in one of the restaurants, that is not so much a meal on that table in front of you both, but a whole banquet for a modest stadium of people. You should have invited us all along from this show. We could have helped you out with that meal, I'm sure. The weather has not been terrible, although more plain skies, as we call them, bleu skies, than I would like. The light's also been a bit of a challenge. While I'm not sure I will have much in the way of keepers, it's all about practice, and sometimes practice is enough, isn't it? And then there's the learning experience of the completely unexpected. On the way back from another of our meals, Phil, this is sounding like a culinary tour, a food retreat, if you will. On the way back from a Chinese restaurant, armed only with my phone, we passed a hairdresser working late, and I made this picture, which I will put on the show page. It's likely the best shot I've made in ages, taken on a phone, with what's been described as a mediocre camera. There's always hope. All the best, your friend, Phil. Phil, there is indeed always hope. There seems to be a show about that today, and that picture of the hairdresser, properly painterly. It's like Edward Hopper's Nighthawks. It really is. I shall leave that in the other pictures, which could form a very large postcard on the show page today. And thank you, Phil, for your letter. I appreciate you're probably home now, aren't you? Back to the world of laptops. Boo. But thank you for the pictures, and I hope you enjoyed the forest. Sounds like you had a fantastic time. The sky, the clouds today, we have clouds. It's not a bleu sky. I've just stopped to make a picture, actually, which I'll put on the show page. This is what I would call, these are Toy Story clouds. You know the one, don't you? Proper Toy Story fluffy clouds. Just sitting in the sky, just passing the time of day. We're okay, just us clouds. A forward throw, as they call it in the radio business anyway, to next week's guest, who will be Stephen DuPont. Now, Stephen is recognised around the world for his concerned photography on the human condition, war and climate, earning him dozens of prizes, including the, listen to this list, W. Eugene Smith Grant, Robert Gardner Fellowship from Harvard, a Robert Capa Gold Medal citation, the Olivia Rebot, and several World Press Photo Awards. That is the sort of mantelpiece or shelf I would be very, very rightly so proud of. He self-designs most of his projects, and his handmade limited edition artist books and his prints are heavily sought after, I would think so, and collected by major museums and libraries internationally and private collectors. So, I'd seen his work. It was a friend of the show, though, Russell Shakespeare, who we need to talk to as well, who suggested his travelling photographic companion when I was talking to Russell about our trip to India next year, because Russell's spent a lot of time in India, made some just sublime stories with his camera, or cameras. But Russell reminded me to talk with Stephen, and it turns out that Stephen actually listens to this show, so I'll be delighted to make that connection next week. To this week, meantime, though, my second guest today is Margaret Soraya. Now, when I first had a chat with Margaret, we talked extensively about her photography and the quiet, yes, I'm talking to you, aircraft that's going overhead, and the quiet landscapes she was making, and the seascapes, and the fact that she would get into the water often and enjoy her photography from being in the water as well. Oh, the pictures, just beautiful, they really are. But what I like about this concluding short story today is how photography has led to so many other beautiful creative adventures for Margaret, which of late have had a meditative effect upon her, really, following the loss of her dear mum. And I personally believe that when you start tapping more and more into your creative self in different ways, then you can discover all kinds of interests that you didn't necessarily expect to follow or try. Margaret's life has changed a lot since our last proper chat on the show. I suppose, a reasonably short amount of time. If you look, for example, at her website now, it's less of a focus on picture making and more about creative retreats and tuition that, quote, quietly help you discover your voice through creativity. Here's my conversation with a friend of the show. This is Margaret Soraya. Margaret, it's great to have you back on the programme. It's nice to... I always like to think of friends coming back. I think it's good to have people that you're familiar with and that you can have another conversation with. You do that on your shows. Yeah,
and it's something that I'd like to do more of. I think there's people that, I've really connected with and got something really valuable to share. And I kind of like to talk about different types of, I suppose, themes or topics around, I suppose, self-development, mindfulness, that sort of thing. It's slightly different from from photography talk as such. So the people that can talk on those subjects, I just find them fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. And so I just want to talk to them more.
I was sorry to hear of the loss of your mum. I know it's been a time of much reflection for you. When I wrote to you, I thought, well, there's nothing I can say to add to this that's probably already, well, not been said or been said. I don't think there is a right or wrong, is there? And I know that from the letters I received after my mother and my father passed away. There's no sort of rule book, is there?
No, but one of the things that I found was that the nicest thing was to actually receive anybody just acknowledging it or just saying, sorry about that, or whatever it is. And I found that was really, really helpful. So I did have a lot of messages and it just sort of carried me through, I think. So I think saying something, sometimes you don't want to say anything because you're not quite sure what to say, but I think saying something really helps people. And also what I found is me being open about it on social media, on on my podcast is now helping other people. And I think that's really amazing. There's been people who have come to me and said, well, it's been great to hear you talk about that, because I think in the UK, we just kind of go, well, okay, somebody's died, it's awful. Now let's get back to normality, 2 or 3 weeks later. Yeah. And we just kind of feel like we have to go along with that. So, and it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. We all have different grief journeys, I think. But I think it's important to be talking about it. And one of the reasons that I like to talk about it is because it was my creativity that's got me through these past few months, basically. So it's been really important to me.
I remember when my father passed, and one of his friends sent me a daft limerick. And I thought at the time, why have you sent me that? It was the weirdest thing. But actually, I've kept the card, and it was a daft limerick. I don't remember the limerick, but I know it was silly. And just at the end, he said, your dad would have liked that. It was but I appreciate it now, funnily enough. At the time, I'm not sure I did, but now I do. I think, I see what you were doing there. You can laugh, can't you?
You can.
It's allowed.
I think you have to at some point. I think there's a time and a place for everything, isn't there? But I think that really helps. And it does really help when people actually talk to you about it. It really helps me. It still helps me now. It was only a few months in, so it still helps me when people, just say something or have been through a similar experience, I think is the big one for me. Knowing that somebody else has felt it and understands what you're going through is a big thing for me.
The two C words, creativity and catharsis, together. I mean, when I lost my father, I was working in radio, and having to return to present this sort of happy, bouncy breakfast show each day, I thought, I'm never going to be able to do that. But I did. And it was a tonic, having that creativity. And I lost Mum on the day of photographing a wedding. And I thought, I'll never be able to go back to that wedding venue because I associated it with Mum. But I did. And it was a great creative tonic. And I think I was fearful on both occasions that these awful personal events would somehow sap my creative energy. But it doesn't, does it?
No, it feeds it massively. And I think it just makes us realise why creativity is so important to us. It's the times of these real either happiness or distress, I think, is where we have our most creative times, because we've got to put that energy and that emotion somewhere in a positive way. It's a positive way because you're actually creating through it, so there's something coming out the other end, and it's not a negative thing. But if you ignore that, if you've got all these difficult emotions and you put them off, or you work, or you start drinking, or whatever it is you start doing, now that's negative, because they'll come back to you. They'll sit there and they'll fester, and they'll come back to you one day, or they'll just wait for you to stop working, and then find you. Whereas if you can put it into being creative, it can be really, really beautiful and powerful. And I think this is the times that we realise exactly why it's so important. And it's not just luxury; it's so important for our well-being.
Have you changed your creative direction at all since losing Mum? I mean, I know you've been doing a lot more painting, haven't you?
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? That was happening anyway, and it was kind of just a coincidence, because she had a very short diagnosis. Basically, it was 3 weeks from diagnosis of cancer to her passing away. So it wasn't a long, I didn't know that this was going to happen, but I'd already planned a winter off so that I could, I keep saying I'm trying to write a book. I'm going to say I am writing a book. I'm writing a book. So I wanted the time and the space to do that. So I'd kind of cleared the diary a bit, this winter. And I thought, well, I'm going to write this, I'm going to keep writing towards this book, and then I'm going to keep painting as well. So those are very conscious things that we're doing anyway. And then when she did pass away, I found that the only thing I could do was paint. It was literally, not the writing, it was a bit too much. But the only thing that I could do to soothe myself or to just get through the day was to paint. So I've been painting. I've got stacks and stacks of paintings now, which is great. It's been absolutely wonderful. So that wasn't a conscious thing, but this time and space, which I luckily have had this winter, has been just coincidental. So I suppose where I am now, it's maybe I am sort of thinking about that at the moment. I haven't actually picked up my cameras yet since last November. Wow. But at the moment, all I know is that the painting and the writing is really helping me get through.
Can you tell us more about the book and the writing, or is it all very close to you at the moment?
No, it's fine. It's been on the boil for about 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know how many years. It's a massive thing, writing a book, isn't it? And it's something that I've had in my head for many years. And it's quite interesting because maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I remember saying the statement, I can't write. I don't write. No, I don't write. So I get somebody to write for me. I don't write with my photographs. And now here I am 7 years later, writing this book. And I think it's a real lesson to never say you're not something. Don't put yourself in a box because, you know, we evolve, don't we? And we do different things creatively and it all informs one another. So, you know, I think it's really good to be doing different creative genres or whatever it is, whether writing, painting, photography. But yeah, so basically the book it's a memoir of such. So a memoir with a sort of self-help / memoir, so little stories of my life, which has been quite dramatic, I suppose, in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of stories there, and it's evolving as I'm writing, because I don't really know how to do this. I've had a bit of help with Beth Kempton, the writer. I've been on a couple of her courses, and I'm doing some work with Joey Hewlins soon as well. But at the moment, I'm just putting it together. I'm just writing the stories when it comes out, and then it'll all hopefully come together this year.
Julia Cameron, the writer behind The Morning Pages, introduced this idea of filling 3 sides of paper with words, streams of consciousness style, first thing every day. There's a really good Guardian article which I'll link to. But what's interesting about this, and what you found with having new ways to express yourself, is that it doesn't need to be complex. You're not writing a novel. You can uncomplicate it in your mind when you come to the page or the paper in the morning, can't you?
Well, it can be as simple as journaling. You know, it's a great word, that, isn't it? It's very in, isn't it, journaling? But you know, it's writing in a notebook, isn't it? And when you look at the power of things like Morning Pages or just free writing and just being a brain dump, you know, onto a page, and how good that is for you mentally. You know, we can all do that. It's accessible to everybody. So I just think I feel very strongly about encouraging people to write, because it can be like that Morning Page idea where you're just writing about your life. It can be working towards a book, but it can also be like writing with your photography, because I don't know about you, I'm interested to get your thoughts on it, but I think that photography is more powerful if it's got not necessarily words with it, but words behind it, so we know what is it about this set of images. I certainly like words with images, and that's really how I started writing on Instagram, just because, well, I found it easy. I don't know, I started writing my thoughts with my images years and years ago, and that's where my confidence built up. So I do think that if you can write with your images, your photography becomes more deep and powerful.
I like to read writing that's, well, if it's of a more personal nature, that's believable. And I think there's a power of writing for yourself, just as making pictures for yourself, that actually makes your work and you more authentic. Yeah, totally. And we have to be, we have to appear something, whatever it is. You can put anything next to that. You know, we have to appear knowledgeable. We have to appear funny. You don't have to appear anything. You just, it's coming back to that thing about being yourself. And I think it's really hard. It's not easy at all, because it's kind of like you're bearing your soul, aren't you, when you write, particularly when you write personal things. And I think to appear, I think one of the things to appear vulnerable is very, very difficult for people. And you're vulnerable when you're yourself, when you're your authentic self. And we don't see much of that now. We see a lot of nonsense, don't we? We see a lot of bravado out there where it's like, I'm living this amazing life and I've got 7-figure income by doing 1 minute work a week, you know. And I live this, you know, it's not real. People aren't sharing their real lives at the moment. And I think then we start to think, well, actually, I'm not as good as them, so I don't really want to share. Actually, I'm having a bit of a rubbish time just now. And this is, but actually what's amazing when you do share the bits where you're just having, a bit like my mum passing away, is people come forwards and they go, oh yeah, thank goodness you said that, because I feel the same, or I feel a little bit down today, or I'm not on top of my health at the moment, or, you know, I just think it's really important to be sharing openly about struggles, I suppose, in life. You've been in India. You mentioned you were doing some writing in India. Ayurveda. Now, I know I've heard of Ayurveda, but I don't know what Ayurveda is.
Yeah, I've been going to India since 2000. I think it was 2016 I went first. And then I went every single year until COVID, and then I didn't want to travel. So I was there for 4 years running. So I basically, I'll just tell you how I ended up there because it's quite relevant. Yeah. I used to have a lot of really chronic migraines. So I'd be like migraine after migraine, which was just awful. Yeah. And I read an article in The Guardian about a lady who'd been to India for Ayurvedic Panchakarma treatment. And she came away with no migraine. So I was like, right, I'm going to try that. I'm going to do it. So I just went, I booked a ticket.
And what's the process or the treatment?
So basically a Panchakarma treatment is a kind of the treatment they put you through for 2 or 3 weeks. And a lot of it is a physical thing, but it's mixed with the mind. So it's mind and body. One of the principles is that, you've got to have this quiet time, be still. So you're not running around. They don't like it if you're going to sit and sunbathe. They don't like it if you're going to go out for a walk. So you often just kind of like, sitting in your room with a book or whatever. And how often do we do that? How often do we have that time alone with our thoughts? So delving into those, the deeper things, you're facing yourself. So facing yourself mentally, but then the physical as well. There's lots of very strange and weird and wonderful things that happen, and you just kind of have to accept it and go, do you know what? They know what they're doing. They've done this before. So, and it kind of gets a bit like, it sounds lovely, but after 2 weeks, you're just like, just leave me alone. I don't want it anymore.
But it clearly works. I mean, I remember talking to only a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, because we're going to India to do a great train journey as one of our adventures. And there was a wonderful expression that was offered up, which was, don't try to understand it, just accept it.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what you have to do when you go to India, just full stop. Yeah. And particularly with Ayurveda, it's, I think you can try and understand it. I've got a few books on it, but it's kind of so complex that you just have to trust, basically. The
emphasis of your business then, I feel, certainly since the first time we talked, it's changed dramatically. If you look at your website now, the emphasis is, well, there is photographic emphasis, but it's not all about photography anymore, is it? It's about experience, and I think the experiential side of photography is becoming more and more important.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, yeah, it's evolved hugely, and it's much more about self-development, self-acceptance, connection, understanding your why in the world, all of these things, and allowing yourself to, giving yourself permission to have time out and to connect with others. I think all of these things are just so important. I think over the years of running workshops, I've developed in my own self, and I saw the need for a deeper connection with people. And that's not necessarily just for me. I think there's time and place for photography workshops that are more traditional. It's not necessarily about running around trying to find different locations all the time. And it's more about accepting and just being, I suppose, gratitude and being content. Content's a good word, actually, with what's in front of you. And there's a lot of work that you need to do on yourself to get to that place. Yeah. And I suppose what I'm trying to do is help people to get to that place of contentment and joy in creativity. And you can do that with other forms as well. So I've introduced some of the things that I'm finding interesting, like writing and painting, as well as the photography. But it's all about breaking down those barriers that we put up ourselves. And I suppose it's finding joy and wellness is really, really important to me.
How's your podcast going? I love your podcast. I love the way that, now I know, and you're going to say, well, you're bound to say that because we did some mentoring together, didn't we? But I love the way that it's developed, that you've thought, I mean, you still do your interviews, but you felt comfortable to take it into, well, here's a moment with me, which I really enjoy. But before you answer that question, let's play just a few moments from a couple of your podcast episodes.
Welcome to another episode of Quiet Moments. Someone recently described me as a really unusual mix of resilience and fragility after hearing me speak on a Camera Club talk. Now, I speak from the heart, and I'm not really afraid to share any of the obstacles that I've had in my life. I'm really well aware that the pain that I've experienced in my life has actually been a blessing. It's given me the strength that I need and the empathy and the understanding to help others through similar things. But we all have different lives to live. We all have different commitments, and we all have different headspace, and we all work at a different pace. And one of the things that was really quite important to tell everybody was that it doesn't matter, even if you're just thinking about this, don't feel like you're falling behind simply because you haven't done as much as the next person.
Well, you certainly practice what you preach within the podcast, don't you?
Yeah, and I suppose the moments with me are vulnerable because they're just my life. That's like, this is what's happening, but they're not all. They aren't misery, I don't think.
No,
I don't think they are. I'm trying to remember. But they're not. But there's, there's honesty, I suppose, and this is what's happening in my life. And yeah, it's evolving. And thank you so much for all your input into it, because I was wanting to move it forwards, and I was a little bit lost with it. So it was great when you helped me with it. And I think that's just so good, isn't it, when we can help each other and give feedback. But basically, I just sort of feel like, again, I'm at this point where I'm not quite sure what's next, because I did a load of interviews in summer into autumn last year, and I've been publishing them. So I haven't really recorded anything new for quite a while. So I'm just on the cusp of doing new interviews, and I've been doing a lot of the solos. So I've been doing a solo and then an interview, and I enjoy the solos actually, but I so often think, well, there's only so much that people want to listen to. If I did that every week, they'd just get a bit fed up with me. But the problem is you don't get feedback, do you? Well, you might do, but I don't get much feedback, so I don't know. I'm always surprised when people say I listen to your podcast.
Well, it is a funny thing, podcasting, or broadcasting. You put them in the radio, broadcasting, podcasting. It's all the same thing. You are in your own space talking to yourself, essentially, aren't you? Which is I think a very interesting experience. I think I've never managed to make it work, but I think a sound retreat, here we go again, would it would be a retreat, would be a fascinating thing for people to do.
Yeah, and I suppose everything sort of slows down. I'm just trying to think of that. Everything slows down when you do it, don't you? Yeah. You're very much in that moment, aren't you? It's it's mindful almost, isn't it? But you also kind of just, going with the flow. I really like the idea of just going with the flow, and then, not doing too much editing to it, and what comes out, comes out.
I listened with great interest to your March episode with Annie Townend. You were talking about walking and talking. See, walking, I think she said walking is one of the ways I renew myself, as a way to reboot or reframe, to find, that was it, to find her rhythm. That was what she said. Walking helps me find my rhythm. But atop that, I was fascinated by the fact that she's taken that into the corporate world.
I know. She does walking, talking, meetings with people. But I just think, she's an amazing lady, actually. She's got her own podcast as well. And she does everything walking. And I just really like that concept, actually. And we went on to... after that, I was thinking, well, I wonder if I could do my interviews walking and talking with somebody, because as time goes on, I don't really like sitting down. I don't really like being at a computer. So I'm trying, everything in my life is aimed at not being on a computer now. That's it. That's my goal in life. But one of the things you do need to do when you're interviewing is proper sound quality and internet. So I was trying to explore how, if I could do that, so I could actually be out on if it's a sunny day, I could actually be out walking and interviewing somebody. Now, you can walk when you're by yourself, and you can just, talk if you're doing your solo ones like you do, obviously. But having that interview, we couldn't figure it out, actually, in the end. So at the end, there was a blank on that, and it's kind of made worse here because we have a bit dodgy signal. So there's not much signal in a lot of places that I'm walking. And we also have a lot of wind, so it can be really difficult to do that. But I'd love to be able to do that more.
I wonder, actually, as a final question, whether it's changed much. I expect it has. I asked you before what your why was, and I'm going to ask you again. And I wonder how much I might contrast and compare, as they used to say in school. Oh God, I used to dread that. What's your why? Has it changed?
I'm just trying to think what I last answered.
Well, I'm glad you can't remember it.
Can't remember what I last answered. you know, it's really interesting, that idea, isn't it? Why your purpose in life and what your why is. And I think it's just clear. It just becomes clearer every year that I live. So it's definitely to help people with their well-being and creativity. And it's mental and physical well-being. And I think that encouraging creativity is so important for it, that I just feel so enthusiastic about that's definitely why I do what I do, and why, you know, even why I'm running the podcast, because it's kind of like it's quite energy, isn't it? There's a lot of energy that goes into a podcast. There's a lot of energy that goes into a business. And I think that if you don't really know why you're doing it or what your purpose is, then it's too hard to keep it going.
And my thanks to Margaret Soraya, who, along with Emily Renier, returned to answer some more questions taken from our list of, well, I suppose 10 life questions, life and photography, that are a regular part of the Extra Mile. So if you can't wait until next Friday and you want to walk a little bit further together, then the Extra Mile edition number 429, to match the number of this programme, is waiting for you. And it sounds a little bit like this today.
On this week's Extra Mile.
And because I was there for Charlotte's mum, and I was so empathetic of what she was going through, I think you put yourself on hold. You know what I mean? And it may be because I was a teacher too, that you just basically, as a human, you put yourself on hold and you focus on the other person, their immediate needs. I was actually fine. I was surprised that I could cope with it, but I was fine.
There's things that you can do, like think about your values in life, and that can really help. You know, if I often get people to try and think about, you know, 3 things that they value in life, and you know, there's exercises that you do, and then if you get it down to one word, which is, I don't know if you've heard of Evan Carmichael.
I have. Yeah.
He's got a book called Your One Word. So if you can get it down to one word that is representative of you.
The Extra Mile is part of our private Patreon channel, where our wonderful community of supporters, our walkers and photographers who want to help keep this podcast here week on week, make a modest, generous monthly, or you can do it annual donation or contribution. If you go to the orange button at the top of the website, the yellowy, orangey yellow one, the one that says support the show, that's the one. You've seen it. You can join us now. There's hundreds of posts within there of extra material. There's the more shows that we used to do. There's playbacks of former interviews, just the interview bit, and there's lots of these, lots of extra miles. Our PS to the show is to come, but before that, we need a play-out song, just to make some final frames to. I'll think about what's being said today. And it is from Southern Call. Now, I'm a bit of that's an understatement. I'm a huge Fleetwood Mac fan, so when I heard this, a big audio hug happened. So while we make some final reflective steps together and some more pictures, here is Cactus Flower from Southern Call, and I have a postscript to the show just after this. Lovely helps.
The summer over desert land, where the sun beats down like a cattle brand. No sign of water, but you quench my thirst. You're the only one living, and still you burn. You're a sight to see, so fierce, so free, such a mystery. Keep going your way, don't ever change, baby. I see you shining in a world of shade. Try to steal your color, but you still don't fade. I
That's Cactus Flower from Southern Call. Right, let's do a final sketchbook picture for the show today. I'm going to make it over here. We're at the point of the walk I call the Hups Stone. I would imagine it's just a piece of the old tarmac or concrete that formed the taxiways and the main runway here at Greenham Common, but it's where Barnes always sits. Sir Barkalot, he knows, put your letters down, he knows he's going to get a treat if he sits on the Hupstone. Look, he's sat straight away. Let's do a portrait while he's still there, and then I'll have to give him a treat because that's part of his deal. I sit on the Hupstone, you give me a treat. When he goes for a walk with his girlfriend, if he finds spurious stones, or look, he's posing, I'll look nonchalantly to the left and then to the right. Pups, look at me. It's a bit of a centre frame dog shot. I'll push yours slightly more to one side, which might make the frame more interesting. Stay there. Go on, stay on your Hupstone. Come on, you deserve one of these. There we go. Bit of ASMR. Bit of eating. I'll get complaints about this. My other listener doesn't like this at all, this bit. There we go. Oh, that sounds so good, pups. Right, shall we head off through the woodland over there? Sort of concentrated on the woodland today. Come on, come this way. Just a few closing thoughts before the PS. Oh, here comes another plane. We are a waypoint. My sincere thanks to you if you are or you're about to become an extra miler. My promise to you is to keep building this wonderful community of kindness in the photographic and walking world. A safe place to share our thoughts about this thing that we do, photography, and really today, creativity, whatever form of creativity that is, be it photography or sound or indeed writing. Now, if you could help me, I'd be really grateful. On the show page, there are some handy buttons that help you share the show alongside all the pictures and our video gallery as well of stuff what we've talked about. They're underneath the player, so they are, the buttons, but also be sure to press that like or subscribe button in your podcast app so I can be sure to let you know whenever there's a new episode out. And if you know somebody who might like to walk with us, let them know with a message or indeed through the share buttons that I've just mentioned. Come on, pups, this way. My thanks to Neil Ford, who looks after IT admirably, Andrea Gilpin, who is across Instagram, and Kelly Mitchell for looking after our Facebook members. And you'll need a postscript for the show, which today, I think the PS has to be about creativity, doesn't it, really? And I'm being greedy. I'm eating out at the Phil Ferris Festival of Food in terms of a main course and dessert, because there are two PSSSs. So as a PS, I like this one from Maya Angelou, the American memoirist, the poet and civil rights activist. She said of creativity, you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. I like that. And as a PPS then, I didn't expect to quote Einstein necessarily, but he is well known actually for this creative gem. Creativity is seeing what others see and thinking what no one else ever thought.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.